Remember, there's some pretty important information here in the disclaimer. You might want to give the video a quick pause and read it.
Oh, hey everybody, it's me, Sonic! Sonic the Hedgehog! Just here to remind you that if you haven't already, make sure to hit that like button. And for even more amazing customs, don't forget to subscribe to Wake Angel 2001! Because between you and me, they're way past cool!
Hello everybody, this is Wake Angel 2001, and first and foremost, I want to apologize for not being as prolific as usual. I know my custom content has gone a little bit down recently. I have been really swamped the past month and a half or so. A lot of real life stuff is coming out. I've been getting more hours at my day job. It's a whole thing. But little by little, I have been working on my customs. Usually I can only maybe sculpt one thing or paint one part, but little by little I do what I can, and stuff eventually does get done. So here's something that I've been kind of piecemealing out for a couple of months. It is a larger scaled version of the issue 39 Mecha Sonic. Now, back in the Jazz Wars days, I did make this a couple of times. It even got featured in the fan funnies of one of the Archie comic books, the debut of Mecha Sally, but I digress. What actually inspired this was this 3D model made by the Serial Scientist on cults3d.com. It's a website where people can post and sell 3D models. This wasn't a free model. I paid like $15 for it, so this is a legitimate, actual cool thing that I bought, and so I could translate into this. Now, the model itself is sold in parts, like the legs, torso, arms, and head are all separate pieces, so that you could assemble them together into a statue. But I didn't want to make a statue, I wanted to make an action figure. So I asked my buddy Corey to cut the parts apart a little bit, so that they would be able to slip onto the torso of an existing figure, and, I would have an articulated action figure from that. The base toy is a Jakks Pacific Knuckles. I'll talk about that in a minute. First things first, I had to make the head. This involved cutting the face off of the head because I couldn't really find a way to print that all in one piece without it being covered in a whole bunch of support media scars that I didn't want. So, yeah, I figured one little seam where the face attaches, which is where the panel lines would be anyway, I figured that would be best. And the ears were already a separate part. The model already came like that. So given a proper paint job, we get the proper menacing visage of the roboticized Sonic the Hedgehog look. Now, I guess this is a good time to bring in the torso. Do you remember when I used a Knuckles head to make some customs, but didn't use his body? So, I think that this was when I made Zarin. No, not Zarin. It was when I made that female Echidna. I used the body from a Loyal Subjects figure and put Knuckles' head on it. That left me with a spare Knuckles body. I decided to experiment with that Knuckles body, if you look at his right arm, you can see that I tried to do something to see if I could try and cut the arm and reattach it in a certain way to make it look like his elbows weren't so deeply bent. I guess it was a partial success, but it did leave a seam that I didn't 100% love, so that's why I never really did it or showed anybody. But it did still work for this torso, because, as you can see, I cut the balls off so that I could put the arms in. But yeah, a little bit of sculpting, a little bit of craft foam to create the the look of the Mecha Sonic body, and we had a torso. Giving up a proper paint job, Like the one thing that I wasn't really able to replicate was that look where like the biceps are like 3 spheres stuck together. I never really understood why they did that. It looked kind of weird. The only thing I can think of is like maybe it was a Vector Man homage, because like Vector Man would have come out relatively recently at the time that issue was released, but I don't know. That's the one aspect of Mecha Sonic's design I was never really sold on. And it really isn't something that I could replicate here in the action figure, so that's the one thing that's going to be a bit of an atavism. The shoulder pads are made out of craft foam, so that they can be a little bit flexible and the arms won't clash with them and scratch up against it. Because the shoulder pads aren't going to be able to move because they're attached to the torso and not the shoulder joints. And, like this body is not designed to have independently swiveling shoulder pads, which is something that, like you would be able to do if you had a torso specifically made for this, but hey, this is a custom figure. Okay, so the arms, here's something I did with the arms. I used Tinkercad to modify them slightly, by making this cylindrical hole inside of them. It's a simple 7mm wide, hole, which means that these can slide neatly over Knuckles' forearms. They go on with enough friction that they don't fall back off, but they're just loose enough that they can serve as swivels. So, even though the figure isn't going to have elbow joints, he will still have wrist swivels functionally. And it also means that you can, if you look on the inside of one of the arms, there's the little communication window, like the little video screen that he used to talk to Dr. Robotnik in the comic book. That was actually captured in the 3D model, and by being able to rotate the bicep around, you can actually make it so that the figure is looking at its forearm as if it's talking into it. So, yeah, that's something I did. I can't be sure if the hands are undersized. Like, I rescaled the hands to the same degree that I rescaled the arms, but I feel like they're small. I don't know, it's weird. Maybe it's just because of the robotic look, because it's not a big fluffy glove, it's a little skeletal robot hand. I don't know. But then came the legs. These gave me the most grief because I could not import these into Tinkercad because the shapes were too complicated. So I had to rely entirely on Corey to modify them in any way. And because the statue was designed to be in like a stance that replicated the look from the comic book cover, the right leg had like a half step to it, so it couldn't really do much for it. So what he did was he took the left leg, which was standing more straight, and just reflected it so that I would have a left and right leg. And then on top of that, the printout wasn't exactly 100% clean. As you can see, I had to do a little bit of sculpting on that thing. But, like the top of you might notice that the top of the thing is missing. Like that little, I want to call it the metal brace that goes over the foot. You see that's missing there? It did print, but I pointedly removed it to make the feet easier to paint. You'll see in a bit. I also had the knee pads separated, and fortunately the knee pads were simple enough that I was able to put them into Tinkercad and make the holes the same way that I did with the forearms, so that they could fit over the knee joints. Oh, by the way, I cut off most of Knuckles' leg and stuck it, and then I physically had to drill a hole into the legs because since I couldn't put them into Tinkercad, I couldn't make the hole myself. And stuck the joints in there and then put the kneecap on top. So yeah, that's how that worked. Yeah, now we have legs. And as you can see, now that they're painted, the top part of the silver bit is reattached. As you can see, like, it would have been really hard to get a paintbrush under and behind those things to get the shin and the foot, which is why I took them off and then glued them back on. So with all the parts compiled together, here is the Mecha Sonic figure completed. And look at that. Isn't that just the most epic thing? Oh, it looks so cool. And yes, he does retain the posability. It's kind of awkward because Knuckles is naturally sculpted to have a slight bend to his knees, so this Mecha Sonic actually looks better in dynamic poses rather than standing stock straight. which is fine because who wants their action figures to stand stock straight all the time? It just would have been nice if it could have done it, because then you could have him standing for the Robotnik's word is law line. But that's a minor quibble. The major quibble I have is that this figure sort of came out in 5-inch scale. Yeah, like here he is standing next to the Jazzwares 5-inch Sonic because he's way taller than the 4-inch Sonic made by Jakks Pacific. I think it might have to do with the fact that I chose to use a Knuckles body as the base figure. I chose the Knuckles body because he has like a wider, more barrel chest, which would be easier to make the Mecha Sonic torso with. But I didn't realize that there's also the implication that the thicker arms and legs would mean that I would have to make the shins and the biceps in a bigger size scale. Like if I made the shins any smaller, then they wouldn't have been big enough for Knuckles' legs to go into. And if I made them just shorter without making them scale smaller, then their proportions would be off and it wouldn't look right. So, yeah, this is kind of a thing where I kind of screwed myself on the scaling just based on the base toy that I used. I'm wondering if I did this again, but used a Sonic torso instead, where the arms and legs are skinnier, would I be able to get the scale down properly? But, you know what, that might be something in the far future, possibly even something I won't do unless somebody commissions me for it, because, I don't really have that much time to indulge in personal projects because I'm, like I said, behind on my commissioning. So, yeah, like, we have an anomalous 5-inch scale figure, but hey, something that can interact with the Jazzwares 5-inch line, because we all know that, like, Jazzwares made, like, nothing for the 5-inch scale. They made Sonic, they made Classic Sonic, they made the super forms of Sonic and Classic Sonic, and then, like, Sir Lancelot, Excalibur Sonic, and, what was Silver's? Lamorak? I think, was Silver Lamorak? I think Silver was Lamorak. Yeah, they basically just made 3 of the knights from Sonic and the Black Knight, and then Sonic himself. Like, they did not make a lot of characters in the 5-inch scale, so it's always good to expand that line, is my excuse. Alright, so thank you all for watching this video, and this is Wake Angel 2001 signing off.